Kids are in bed?
Kids are in bed.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 41 of The Kids Are in Bed. I'm Tim Severson, and this is Jenny Severson. Jenny, how are you?
So good, thanks. And how are you?
I am also well. Thank you
Wonderful.
for asking.
Fantastic.
What's new?
Let's see. Well, it was another great weekend. The Severson home. Had some Prosecco.
Yep.
And then I had some more Prosecco. And then I had some more Prosecco.
It was a pop-up Jenny's Favorite Things day on Friday night.
Yeah.
Got you all sorts of fun stuff.
That was nice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I loved it. Some new jammies. All my favorite treats.
Yep.
All my favorite Proseccos.
Open face beef sandwich with medium rare mashed potatoes.
I just wish there was a better name for an open-faced beef sandwich. Like, in terms of what sounds the most disgusting of all the foods, it's at the top.
Yeah.
It needs to be renamed.
Smothered beef.
I think it's the beef at all.
The
I
beef
think
at
that
all.
having beef in the name at all is like too much.
But that's what it is.
Because like an open-faced turkey sandwich doesn't like appall me so much.
Yeah. What do you got against beef?
Oh no. I don't know. It was delicious.
Yeah, it turned out
so
good.
good.
Yeah. Yes, it was a fine weekend at the Severson home.
Mm-hmm.
I've actually got a couple of videos I wanted to show you.
Oh dear Lord.
They're not bad. They're not. Don't do that. Don't do that.
What
Don't
kind
act
of
like.
videos?
No, they're just videos. So like this one is going to. I've got 3 to show you, and one's going to lead into what we're talking about this week.
Okay.
But these first couple are just ones that I came across that I just want your reaction on. I grabbed this one because it caught my attention because every once in a while I come across things that if I didn't have TikTok or the internet, it's like, man, I would never have thought about that. Like that would not be something I'd ever consider. And so you'll see what I mean.
Okay, perfectly clean. Now Johnny's gonna back up to kind of like midfield. Yep. And what he's gonna do is listen to Joy's 4 taps. Now, from his perspective, he's still gonna play clean. Okay, we trust that Johnny knows how to play clean. He knows how to play right with those 4 taps. But to our perspective, it's gonna sound a little off. Okay, go ahead. Hear it? Try it again. Okay. Now that split-second difference from where he is right there is usually not as big.
Do you
of a
get
problem
what's going on?
Like at a show. From right there.
Is
the
sound
Yeah.
traveling?
Go ahead and go to the back, Johnny.
So I've never considered this before in my entire life. Like that this is something that.
And this is why I'm always saying, Pitt, listen back to the battery. Because the battery has to play, the sound has to come forward, and then we meet up together, and then we send our sound up to the audience. Okay, same demonstration.
Oh.
So wait. Now wait.
Okay, now, how do we solve that? We solve it by having the sound start from the back. So, Johnny, give us 4 taps. That's how we solve it. Okay?
Oh.
How great was that?
Whoever's the furthest back in the field is what we should be listening to. So if you're in the
Oh
pit,
my God, this is hurting my brain.
Yeah, you know what I mean though? Like how never would I ever think about that. I
No.
never was in band, right? Like
Yeah.
never. But as soon as I saw that, I'm like, oh yeah, that's a big deal. And then I'm like, oh, that's so simple. Yet I never could have figured it out.
Never.
I'd just be like, well, you just played a different beat.
Yeah. Yeah. I think we should just stop playing.
Yeah.
Just go home.
See, that wasn't bad.
All right.
I'm not trying to trick you. This one for 2 reasons caught my attention. I'll tell you when we're done.
Y'all, listen. My daughter is severely allergic to peanuts. So we're sitting here And I'm like, go ahead, you go ahead and eat all the Twix and I'll eat all the Snickers and blah, blah, blah. And there's like a handful of Twix in the bag. And she's like, Mom, I only eat the left side. I only eat the left Twix. And I'm like, what? She's like, yeah, Mom, it's the difference in the caramel and in the cookie. I only like the left side. And here I thought that she was pulling my chain. So I asked Alexa what the difference was, right? And Alexa gives me this answer, that there's a such thing as a left and a right. Y'all, I was today years old finding this out. I never knew there was a such thing between the Twix, having a left side and the right side. Am I the only one who didn't know this? Y'all, what's your thoughts? Tell me I ain't the only one. I've been buying Twix this whole time and never even knew that there was a difference. Yeah. Tell me no, y'all. I see y'all in the comment section.
So I just love her. That's the biggest reason. Just like she's just seems amazing. But there was one time my nephew we were playing a game or something. It's like, what's your favorite candy? And he was like, left Twix. And I remember thinking that was so funny. But then I saw this and I'm like, is there a difference? I'm like, there can't be. But like, I think in the comments there were some people that were like, "Oh yeah, I only," and I'm like, "No, it's a marketing thing, right?" So I looked it up, but the thing is like if you search it, you pretty much land at the Twix site, no matter what, and they are very convincing about it. But all it is like they describe the ingredients for each one slightly different. So like one is smothered in milk chocolate and the other is coated in milk chocolate. So but it's all the same. Yeah. But I just think it's so funny that people are like, what? Like that people can still got on things like that when it was like a whole marketing campaign for like, I feel like for like multiple years it went on for.
Yeah. They had a commercial where it was like they were made in separate factories.
Yeah. There's a whole backstory. Yeah. You can read all about it on the website and you can vote on which side you are. It's a whole thing. It's very cool, but I really liked her. So that was why that's in there. So this video is going to launch us into our topic of the day, which I had no intention of talking about this in any way except for me. No, this wasn't going to come up, but I saw this. So
okay.
First of all, I'll just get your initial thoughts on this.
Hold on, Sam. Did you know that there was bullshit stories in Ripley's Believe It or Not? That there was just fake nonsense?
He thought they were all true. He thought like all of the things.
I thought they were real. Believe it or not, they're real.
Did you? He didn't.
Did you know what I'm saying?
So, Ripley's Believe It or Not. What's your reaction to that video?
My immediate reaction is I thought that they were all real.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm like right with this guy.
Yeah.
I thought it was all just like, can you believe it?
Yeah.
Kind of like Guinness World Record type stuff.
Right. So when it comes to Ripley's Believe It or Not, I was under the impression that it was real.
Can you believe it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, believe it or not.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, and that's always been my impression. But then I sat with it and I'm like, I've never been. So when you think of Ripley's Believe It or Not, like when you hear that, what do you think of?
I think of Niagara Falls.
So you think of like the museums, like the kitschy museums that exist, like right next to the wax museums. There's always a Ripley's Believe It or Not. Okay. So what's interesting is that's where I started with this. I'm like, man, okay, what do I know? And the first thing I thought of was the television show from the late 90s, early 2000s. Do you have any recollection of this show?
No.
So it was on something like the CW or something like that. And it was hosted by Dean Cain.
Oh,
and
okay.
they
Maybe
had,
I do remember this.
what was her name?
I love Dean Cain.
They had a field correspondent. She was on Baywatch for a while. Like Kelly something, but like she would like go on the spot. And so basically the show was
tonight on Ripley's. This beautiful little girl always had an uncanny love for cats. But not even her parents ever imagined that one day she'd become one. He might look like a 90-pound weakling, but don't let little Josh Campo fool you, because he has the power to outlift a grown man. Only on Ripley's Believe It or Not.
it was a kind of a reimagining of what Ripley's Believe It or Not was supposed to be. But I watched a little bit of it today. I do want to show you a couple of scenes from this one that I saw, because it is so, like, Dean Cain would basically just introduce clips, very short amount of times, but like very on the verge of the dude from CSI Miami that always had the catchphrases and would put the sunglasses on.
Oh, yeah.
His lead-ins were almost there. They're not that bad.
You may never think of rock climbing the same way again after you see a 14-year-old girl named Tori Allen compete in a sport that is called speed climbing. Spider-Man meets Spider-Woman.
But it was just this ridiculous show.
There he is.
Yeah, Dean Cain, man. He
What happened to him?
I don't know. It's a great question. So give you a little
Till
flavor
one
here.
diehard animal lover found a way to beat the odds. Now she's got the first horse in history who wears a state-of-the-art prosthetic hoof.
When horses become seriously injured, their fate is often quickly determined. Sadly, they're put to sleep. The stallion may have a chance at trampling the odds. Because believe it,
Why did they have to say it right in front of the horse, you know?
I don't know.
So, but this is what the show is. And like this was one isolated episode that I went through. And then like at the end, there's a piece about a girl who really cares for reptiles, and she wants to give snakes a safer habitat, and she likes to care for them. So it's just her doing a desert bikini photo shoot with snakes all over her, and they're like, she really likes snakes.
and the seductress who poses with serpents so she can help save their skins.
Some snakes have power to kill me just by squeezing me.
Believe it or not. It's like, that's not what the whole thing like is. Just have a half naked girl on in the early 2000s, you know? So this is what I thought of immediately, but then there's also books. They were kind of like Guinness World Records books. It was like, there's that, and then there's Ripley's Believe It or Not books. And so I was just like, man.
I definitely remember the books.
And so I looked at that, and those other people were so confident that it was like not real. And I was so I did some just searching, and I found this guy on the internet. He has and this is just like a WordPress site, but he like took the time and he just kind of picked some to go through and talk about their validity. But there's some of the early ones, so we'll come back to him. But I do want to talk about it because his writing is very funny, and he did a lot of work to kind of go through and sleuth a couple of these out, and I thought it was very interesting. But what happened to me today was I got interested, and then I stumbled upon a PBS American feature about Robert Ripley. Are you ready to learn about Robert Ripley? You should be excited. It's a great story. It is so crazy. So So let's just start with an example that this guy did on his website, because I think that I want you to kind of be in the same headspace I was in. So this is one of the very first illustrations from a Ripley's Believe It or Not. And so as you can see here, we have SDC, and the claim is that he was able to hop 100 yards in 11 seconds. Okay, so that's the claim. And so this guy, he goes through and does the calculations of yards to meters, because there is a world record holder in hopping the 100 meters. And what he goes on to say is that the current record as it stands is 15.57 seconds. That's been recorded. And so this has existed. This is from 1920s-ish.
Okay.
So seems unlikely that there was a man who could hop 100 yards in 11 seconds then, and we have Usain Bolt now, but there's nobody who can hop faster than that.
Yeah.
You know, so
Seems a little sus.
Yeah, you're like, okay,
sus.
okay. And so these were all of these examples. So then this next one that he has is about Charles Coughlin. And so the lore behind this story is that he had died in Galveston. A storm came through and washed his body out into the Gulf of Mexico, and it got into the current of the ocean, and it swung his body around Florida and back to his hometown, Port-au-Prince or something like that, and like landed on shore a few miles from where he lived. And so, real man, died in Galveston, did get washed to sea. His body was found by hunters 8 miles from the cemetery that he had washed out from. Okay. So the pattern that I was starting to see is I'm like, oh, these are like bar stories. Like he just published bar stories, and it's like, I don't know, if somebody tells me something and I go, are you telling the truth? And they go, yeah, right? So like I'm like, oh, he was just kind of like telling fake stories and presenting it as fact, and that's not super cool.
No.
But then I'm like, there's the whole artifacts thing. So I'm like, there must be something deeper.
There must be something deeper.
There must be more.
Let's go. Take me deeper.
All right. So the illustration. So back in the day, I kind of learned that this was a job. Being a sports cartoonist was a job. So you would illustrate the still of the game or the boxing match in the paper. So before they were able to get the pictures developed and in the paper on time, people just drew it. Weird. I've never thought of that, but that was a job, and that's what he did. And so that's where this all starts. So this SDC, this is from the very first iteration that he did of this. So he was just a normal sports cartoonist, and he would write little articles about whatever sporting event. He was up against it in the winter, and there was no sporting events to be had. And so he had a notebook full of newspaper clippings and notes and different things of all these kind of sports records or feats that had been accomplished that were just kind of like, well, kind of interesting, like hopping 100 yards in 11 seconds. And so, but he was up against a deadline and had writer's block, so he just drew a bunch of these. Another one, I wrote a few of them down. One was a forester of Toronto ran 100 yards backwards in 14 seconds.
Congratulations.
Another one just said, and it was just a question, remember that chap who walked backwards across the continent? And it was a guy with like a backpack on and a walking stick, and he was holding what looked like a picture, but luckily he wrote mirror with an arrow to it. So it was a man walking backwards. So I'm like, that's not even a thing. Like, you just like, you're asking somebody to confirm that maybe somebody tried to do that one. So it's like, so I started to get this picture of a guy who's kind of a a swindler.
Yeah. Sounds
You know,
like
which
Trouble in River City.
right, which tracks with the you know, kind of the feeling you get when you see one of those Ripleys. You're like, geez, yeah, what's going on in there, kind of deal. That's how I felt too. But there's more. There's more. So he grew up in Northern California. His dad was a carpenter. His family had a hard time making ends meet, and this is he was born in 1890. So right around the same time as your grandpa, actually. So you know how those guys were.
Yeah, I do.
And so he was buck-toothed, like very, very pronounced buck teeth, and he had a stammer. And so by all accounts in this documentary, he was a very isolated guy and would spend his time drawing and got quite good at it. And somehow or another, if they just had it in there, like, oh, send your drawings in. And he sent a drawing into Life magazine and got published, and they sent him $8. And that was it. That's what he wanted to do from then on out. And a family friend got him a job at a San Francisco newspaper, and he moved to San Francisco. Still kind of an outcast there.
Okay.
But he ended up living in Chinatown and felt a little more comfortable there because so many people didn't speak the language and they had their different culture. And so I think what these people were saying is he felt a little more comfortable there. He didn't feel like such an outcast. He felt self-conscious kind of in his normal life. And so, but it ended up not working out. He got fired from the first paper he worked at, got fired from the second one. And one of the guys at one of the papers said, you're good enough. You just need to go out east. New York, you've got more opportunity. You'll get a job out there. It'll work out. You just need to get out there. So he packed it up all on his own and just bought a one-way ticket to New York from California in like 1919, which is just such a crazy, you know what I mean? Like
just moving
across
the country.
So he gets there, finds a job like right away, and completely changes his whole persona. He gets a good paying job, and they showed a picture that he sent his mom. He wore exclusively suits. He became a really well-dressed guy, he rented an apartment in downtown New York and became a member of the New York City Athletic Club. He was a handball champion. He was a New York City champion and a national champion on team handball. So he just became this completely different person. And he was a sports cartoonist still for the New York Globe. That is when he had this writer's block and he threw these weird sports figures in. And it was the first iteration of that, but he didn't know it. It was just luckily his editors were cool with it. They put it in, and he didn't do anything like it for another 10 months. 10 months later, he needed it again, did another one, and that was the first time then that he called it Believe It or Not. But it was very much of the same concept. Are you interested so far?
I am interested so far.
Okay, good. Do you have any questions? So, in tandem with his cartoons, he would write stories. So he was also a writer and talented, and people really liked his stories along with the cartoons. It was kind of a full experience. And so the New York Globe sent him on assignment to travel the world and write stories about these different places: Hawaii, Japan, China. Yeah, he was going around the world, and then he would draw his cartoons, write a little story, and send it back. And that's where he got introduced to more Asian culture and, in India, Hindu culture. And that is where he started to see, the people doing the different rituals to honor gods. Like he saw a guy staring at the sun to honor the god until he couldn't see. And, they would do the contortion stuff. So he saw all this new And he was just couldn't believe it. So then he started drawing that. And that just kind of stuck with him when he came back. And he started to just do that more and more frequently. And he would publish these stories. And then he would put out, people would send him their stories because they want, and it became like a big thing. And at one point in New York City, the post office just said, you have to stop sending. We were not delivering to him anymore. Because it was, people would want to get in there. It was like a very cool thing to be in a part of that spread. And so as he started to write those more, Simon and Schuster, they were very much interested in him writing a book, and he was like, "I'm a journalist. I'm not an author." But they were persistent through the years, and they finally convinced him, and he compiled all of these stories and illustrations into Ripley's Believe It or Not, the first book, and it was like an instant bestseller that people were just into, like I think one of them was in a Hindu man who had like a really long mustache that like stretched out to like the tips of his fingers.
Like I've seen that one.
And so it's like things like that the world hadn't really experienced in that way, but that we all clearly very much enjoy. And he was just able to capture that. So that book was huge. And then he got a deal with Raymond Hearst, and that got the Ripley's Believe It or Not spread like syndicated across the country. So that was all of a sudden in all these papers all over the place. And that's how he got his start in doing that. But they were all these. So at first, when I started, I'm like, oh, he's a swindler. But now I'm like, oh, this guy is like, he's kind of making his own way. But the underlying message of a lot of the things that he was highlighting is he was highlighting marginalized people and giving them a space for the thing that they could do well that nobody really paid attention to, right? Like, you're not a good boxer, but you can hop on 1 foot 100 yards really well. Like, I'll put you in the paper for that, Or like there was he had one about a woman who claimed to hold the record for most pies baked in a lifetime, and she had sat down and like did the math on how many pies she had made over the course of 45 years, and he didn't make fun of people, and it wasn't to look and point, it was to celebrate them. And so it was like you started to see this picture of a guy who was like very empathetic and not putting a freak show on.
I really just kind of want a pie.
Oh.
Now I'm wondering, what kind of pies did she make? Were they berry?
So anyways, that was the intent of all of this stuff. So as he got more popular and he got this syndication, he had all this money. So then he went back out to travel the world to go find more stories. And I think they said like over his lifetime, he visited 201 countries. And I think like over his lifespan, like 235 countries existed. So it's like he's one of the most traveled mans of his era. Mans. And did I say mans?
Yeah.
Men. That was weird.
You're going to say it again?
I know. And so he was out looking for these oddities. Mm-hmm. Enter Norbert Perlroth. Ever heard of him?
Never heard of him.
Nope. Nobody has. He was a bank teller in New York City. He was I think he was a first generation immigrant from Germany. He was Jewish, and he was a very intelligent guy. He spoke and like read and wrote in 14 languages. And he was a bank teller at Robert Ripley's bank.
Okay.
And he hired him to be his research assistant. And so while he was traveling the world, Norbert would wake up every day. He quit his job at the bank, would wake up every day, and he would commute to downtown New York City to the New York City Public Library, where he would research all of the facts that would be published in the publications. So everything,
Yikes.
all of the things that are in there that are true are from this guy who, and according to his son, 6 days a week he was in there from 8 a.m. until 5 p.m.
Oh my God, that sounds so boring.
And so that was what was so interesting. Like, you could tell the son had a bit of edge, that like there was never credit given to him.
Mm-hmm.
Like, it was always just Ripley's Believe It or Not. It was always that. But his son said like he loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Like, that's what he liked to do. And so I'm like, that's good for him, right?
Absolutely. You know what they say?
You know, like, if he didn't want it.
Yeah. Find a job you love.
Right. So that's that. And so there was very little about that. So I'm going to pivot really fast.
Okay.
We're going to talk a little bit about Mr. Ripley's love life.
This is what I've been waiting for.
So, awkward looking man, buck teeth until late into his life, and eventually he got the money, Cardi B style, got the bag and got his teeth fixed. But he didn't have him make him perfect. He wanted him still to be a little crooked. That was very important to him.
That's peculiar.
So he had a wife very early on after he moved to New York. And in the documentary I was watching, they said that was a bitter divorce. And he kind of vowed coming out of it that he was going to be single forever. Like, I'm a bachelor forever. And he was, but I couldn't find any reference to him having any other wives. He had a lot of girlfriends. He was seen on the town with models and various other socialites and actresses. But in the documentary, they were just like, oh, he had this wife and it was a bitter divorce. She was a dancer. And I was like, that was a lot of information. Like, they really glossed over that. But I mean, bad enough to make a dude go like never again. I'm like, what could that be? I didn't find much of a story, but I did find her Wikipedia page. And so her name was Beatrice Roberts. Beatrice Roberts. Do you know the name?
Beatrice Roberts. I do not know the name.
Beatrice Roberts, would you believe it if I told you, was seen in 60 Universal Pictures over a period of 1932 until 1949. She appeared in 60 films. And you'll notice as I scroll through here, there are uncredited, and they're all like nurse and okay.
Uncredited.
Right? Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. All right. So
okay.
You can look and see. Now, don't spoil things here. Let me get you to the story. So she was a dancer, but so of course I just clicked on it and looked in to see she married our hero of this story, Robert Ripley, at the ripe age of 14.
Shoot.
When Robert was 29.
Oh, Robert.
The marriage, in terms of them being actually physically together, like, or near each other, was 3 months. But it took 6 years for the divorce to finalize.
Oh my.
So I don't know. So there's like the perverted side, but there's also, did they like, there wasn't a ton about the divorce. So did he get like, kind of taken? Like, did they recognize that this guy had a lot of money and they were like, oh, we trapped him? I don't know. Something to think about.
Okay.
Anyways, so that's how that happened. So then
did you just
make all that up?
Did you just try to say that a 14-year-old
No, I was talking about her parents.
swindled a 29-year-old?
No, I'm talking about the parents because it doesn't matter. I'm just saying there wasn't a lot of information. I was trying to give the guy a break. Maybe there's a whole nother side of the story. I don't know what it is. So I was just trying to present both. Both of them are hearsay from me. 100 years later. Literally. Anyways, she was 14. So I was like, well, what are the odds? Like, I thought, oh, she's in all these movies because she was married to him and she was known, but this happened early in his career before his real rise, and she was only 14, and she wasn't in her first movie for another 10 years or so after they were split. So I'm like, so she, as you can see, she's quite fair. She got Louis Meyer of Metro Goldwyn Mayer. He was quite struck with her.
Oh, he was he?
Yes. So he wrote in all of those parts. She was just when you need an extra.
Oh.
So she would just get the call and she would go in. I don't think that they ever married. She did go away to marry another man in Tijuana, but that didn't that only lasted a short period because he was. Do you know what this means when I say it to you? He was a bigamist.
A bigamist?
Yeah. Oh, good. I didn't know.
I don't know what that is.
Yeah.
What is it?
That's one who weds another whilst already being wed. So it's if I went and married somebody else, that would make me a bigamist to them because I was already married to you, but I didn't tell them.
Oh.
It's crazy that that's happened enough that needs its own word.
Yeah. Okay. Okay.
And it's not very pejorative sounding. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't make you sound like a bigamist. Like, oh, good for you.
Sure doesn't.
So that was just a little sidetrack I went down.
Wow, quite the sidetrack.
Right? That's an amazing story. So anyways, back to our regularly scheduled programming of Robert Ripley. So yeah, he spent then his depression years, he was racking up money, and that's when he started to really become the playboy kind of guy. Is because he kind of peaked at the peak of I keep thinking recession. Depression. At the peak of the Great Depression. And so nobody cared about buck teeth when you were throwing around $500,000 and right in the middle of the Depression. So that's when he started to launch off. And then he has a star on the Walk of Fame in Hollywood, but it's because of his radio show. His radio show was like his crown jewel of what he did. And what made that show so special is he would record episodes in places where people didn't usually record radio. So it was like bottom of the Grand Canyon.
Welcome to Grand Canyon. This is Bob Ripley speaking to you 1 mile down at the bottom of the canyon. He
did it once like in a scuba suit with sharks. So you would do these things and people would just be in front of the radios just like, this is crazy. But that is where he built up the majority of his wealth and got the most notoriety was through the radio show.
All right.
He then got pretty unhealthy. By all accounts, he was very awkward to be out in public, especially if he was speaking. So he always had like a glass of whiskey or gin. So I think he was a big drinker. He ended up gaining a lot of weight. People thought he might have had a stroke at some point that he didn't tell people about. And desperately wanted to travel, but World War II, he couldn't, and his health was kind of declining. And so he was able, when the war ended, to go back to Asia and actually did radio broadcasts about the devastation of World War II, and like a very realistic account of what Hiroshima looked like, which I don't know that a lot of people had really heard that description. Like, I mean, he said, and he's like, in an instant, 15,000 people were vaporized. And I don't know that was, I don't know if the U.S. government was like, cool, tell everybody about that part. You know what I mean? Like, I don't, there wasn't much about that in the documentary, but he did that. And then he came back with a little vigor, a little rejuvenated. And then he started a TV show. But the 13th episode of that show, he had a cardiac episode in the middle of filming, but he was okay. But they were like, you probably need to go to the hospital. And he's like, didn't go to the hospital. Ended up going a couple days later. They kept him for observation. He called a buddy to schedule plans for when he got out the next morning, and hung up that phone and promptly had a heart attack and died in the hospital. And so that was his story, but his legacy lives on. He built something huge, the museum whole thing. So he did a whole opening on Broadway. He did a show down there. They renamed Broadway the night it opened. There was a 1936 poll done to the boyhood youth in America. Who do you most want to be when you grow up? And Robert Ripley was number one with a bullet over athletes, over the president, over everybody. They wanted to be him. They wanted to travel the world and see all these things and write about it and draw cartoons. Like that was the thing. And did you know any of this?
No.
Yeah. Isn't that weird? It like I
didn't
feel
even
like
know Ripley was a person.
Believe it or not, he is. So that I just like fell down that. So back to this guy who wrote about these. So I'll just give you a couple more examples. So this one was interesting. The United States president. Now his math is kind of off.
Okay.
But just off the jump, do you know what all of those presidents have in common?
They have the same number of names and letters in their name.
No, they all died in office.
Oh.
It was right there.
Oh.
Just testing your observation skills. No, like so, like this one is real. So, like it's not exactly right, but the pattern that he describes here is real, and actually extended out. That there was like a mathematical jump. This guy goes through it all, but that it ended. Reagan was supposed to be one, which is kind of interesting because he had an assassination attempt, and so he broke that cycle.
Thank goodness.
Or maybe not. What if that was critical? What if that was part of like the natural order of things?
What natural order of things?
I don't know. This one, like some of them are just like, they're interesting and you want them to be true. Like he's very much my kind of guy, right? Like, I don't know, seems right. Does it hurt anybody? No. So like this one, OPQRST, the above letters were sent by Hugh in 1867 and were correctly interpreted by the French to read, I don't know how to read in French.
Oh.
But that's what it means is arrested at Pecu, I don't know. And so that's just a thing, right? But like there's no real verification of who Huey is or Hugh or who that is or what might have happened. So there's a lot of like hearsay stories that get put in there.
Okay.
Does that affect how you... So then now that you know all that, does it affect how you think about what you knew about Ripley's Believe It or Not.
Didn't really think about it a lot before, if I'm being completely honest.
Appreciate the honesty.
So the only direction to go was up. No, I mean, I thought they were chintzy museums. That's all. I didn't really think a lot about them. I think I knew there was a book. Definitely didn't know there was a TV show.
They claim to have fact checkers. So I don't know of like their more present information. I feel like it was also very visual. Like the shows that they did, they would have nurses in the theater because people would faint. Oh. And it sounded like there wasn't anything grotesque.
Okay.
But it would just be like things that you weren't expecting to see. Like there was a guy who, I don't know, they had like a little video of it. I don't know exactly how he did it or if there was a trick or what, but it looked like he could spin his head almost all the way around his body. Or like, contortionist people. Yeah. There was a guy who could smoke a cigarette out of like the inside of his eyeball. Disgusting. Just things like that.
Yeah. I think what I'm more impressed with than the life of Mr. Ripley is your ability to retain all of this information. You just recited all of that. And I mean, did you just start learning about this today?
Yeah. Like at noon.
I mean, I could spend a whole day spiraling down through information like this. And then at the end of the day, I would say, oh, I read some really cool stuff about Ripley.
And for no reason at all, I call them Believe It or Not.
Yeah.
And that would be my story.
No. Yeah, now everybody I see is going to have to hear about Robert Ripley for the foreseeable future. A lot of facts knocking around in this old noggin that
But that you can recall them. You had 100% recall.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I had notes in front of me too.
I didn't see you looking at notes.
Oh. Oh yeah, like this one. The butterfly was originally called the flutterby. And it's like, I mean, maybe, right? No. Somebody like
no. Animals are named by scientists. Their names don't just change.
Yeah, there could have been a scientist at the same time, and flutterby just wasn't as popular, but he could have tried at the same time.
I kind of want to call butterflies flutterbys now. It's way more fun to say. Flutterby. I'm a big fan.
Flutterby is good.
It is good.
Or this one is like a tragic mistake. Napoleon, he coughed, and whatever he said in French was "my damn cough." But the similar phrase could be massacre everybody. And so that's how 1,200 Turkish people were massacred during this coup d'etat that he had. And so, it's like, that sounds believable, but this guy went through and looked up and was like, yeah, there's not really. And like Snopes is on some of these and has looked them up.
Yeah.
But, so it seems like the whole point of this is that the next time we're in such a place, I think I need to make a special trip into Ripley's Believe It or Not, because it sounds exactly up my alley.
Let's check it out.
With the things of like,
where's the closest one?
I don't know. Actually, Wisconsin Dells.
Perfect. Let's hit it up. Let's do it.
I'm pretty sure it's probably not open in the winter,
Why wouldn't it be open in the winter?
I don't know. A lot of times, like tourist places, like they shut down their shit in the winter because like nobody's gonna be here. A lot of people go to the Dells in the winter.
We are.
Yeah, that's true. I always assume that we're gonna be the only people.
Oh.
Or hope, I guess.
Let's check it out.
Yeah, we should. Well, the kids would love it.
Yeah.
Clementine would love it. There's tons of like creepy kind of. Oh, actually, I think I saw that they have some like serial killer who's like skull.
I don't think she's ready for serial killers.
It's like his skull like hanging from the ceiling and like cracked open, and there's like a vampire thing. No, she'll love it. Actually, she will. I'm not even kidding. Like she would be like, yes. She would.
I know. Shoot.
She's in her dark era.
She is in her dark era.
Yeah, but there you go. Who would have thought Dean Cain would have brought me all the way here?
Superman.
Do you need any help?
Nope. Found what I needed.
Yeah, Dean Cain. Oh, and it did end here. Sorry. Are you sick of me? What's happening?
You were just really fondly thinking of Dean Cain.
Oh, who doesn't fondly think of Dean Cain?
Who would have thought? Dean Cain.
This is how the episode ended.
This artifact is on loan to Ripley's from John Resnikoff's personal collection of historical hair. These could be the most valuable split ends on Earth. Certified, authenticated, and currently valued at $50,000, this bleach blonde lock of hair was snipped off by the mortician who assisted in embalming the body of this Hollywood star. Apparently, the head of the deceased was so swollen that surgery had to be performed on the back of the neck before the public viewing. And this sample was taken from the trash can by the mortician's wife, a loyal, longtime fan of the dearly departed. Have you guessed it by now? These strands belong to none other than Marilyn Monroe. Unbelievable? Believe it.
Oh my God. Wow. Well, that I do not believe.
I kind of want to watch Fear Factor. That was old school Fear Factor too, with Joe Rogan. Yeah, so that's what those episodes were. I just remember them. They would come on at like 10 p.m. on like Tuesday nights, you know?
I was sleeping.
You were sleeping. I was watching Ripley's Believe It or Not. All right. Well, I bored you enough with my Robert Ripley facts.
I loved learning about Robert Ripley.
Should we go check on the kids?
Let's go check on the kids.
See you next week, everybody.